They laughed because they could not see it. A house, to them, had walls. A chimney. A roofline against the sky. Something that proved itself from a distance. Elias Crow's home had none of those things. Only a wooden door lying flat in the frozen ground. It sat at the edge of the valley beyond the last fence post, half covered in wind-blown snow, iron ring handle black with frost. Beside it rose a narrow stovepipe no taller than a man's shoulder, breathing a thin line of smoke into the gray air. That was all. No windows. No porch. No walls. Just a door in the earth. Children dared each other to run and knock on it. Men used it as a joke. Careful near Crow's place, they'd say. Might step on the roof. Then they'd laugh. Jonas Hale laughed loudest. He rode out the first week Elias moved in, bringing 2 friends and enough amusement for all 3. Elias was hauling cut sod to patch the roof around the hatch door when Jonas reined in nearby. Well now, Jonas called. Didn't know men were living like potatoes these days. The others laughed. Elias kept working. He tamped another square of frozen earth into place and pressed snow over the seams. Jonas circled the hatch slowly on horseback. No walls, he said. No windows. No pride. Less wind, Elias replied. That drew another round of laughter. Jonas tipped his hat. And when spring rain comes, you planning to swim indoors? Elias stood, shovel in hand. The roof is pitched beneath the soil. Drain trench runs east. Walls are timbered and sealed with clay. Jonas smirked. You always answer foolishness with details. Details keep men warm. Jonas grinned wider. Come winter, we'll see. They rode off still laughing. Elias returned to work. By evening the hatch blended almost perfectly with the surrounding ground. Only the iron ring and stovepipe marked where the home lay beneath. That was how he wanted it. Invisible to wind. Ignored by cold. Protected by the one thing the valley treated as dirt. Earth. The chamber below was simple but carefully planned. He had dug 8 feet down until the frost line no longer ruled the soil. Then he widened the space into 2 rooms with timber-braced walls. Thick clay-sealed gaps. Shelves were cut directly into packed earth. A bunk stood along the warmest wall. At the center sat a small cast-iron stove surrounded by stone. The hatch opened into a stairwell, descending sharply so cold air dropped into the entry pit, instead of spilling into the main room. Every choice mattered. Heat rises. Cold sinks. Earth changes temperature slowly. Air changes it fast. Most men built upward because it looked like success. Elias built downward because winter did not care how things looked. Autumn passed with plenty of mockery. Women carrying laundry paused to point at the stovepipe. Children knocked on the hatch and ran. Jonas told anyone listening that Crow had buried himself before nature could do it. Elias let them talk. He spent his days sealing seams, storing root vegetables, stacking split wood in the stairwell, and testing airflow through the stovepipe. At night, he slept in quiet warmth while wind skimmed harmlessly over the ground above. The first hard frost came in October. Cabin windows silvered by dawn. Water pails froze at the edges. Men added extra logs before bed. Elias lit one modest fire below ground and watched the temperature climb steadily. The earth around him had not yet surrendered summer's stored warmth. Even after the fire dimmed, the room stayed mild. He smiled. Good. A week later, Jonas came again, pretending curiosity. He stood by the hatch while Elias emerged carrying a bucket. Still alive down there? Jonas asked. For now. Jonas peered into the stairwell. Warm air drifted upward. He frowned despite himself. Feels warmer than outside. It is. Jonas quickly recovered. It's October. Winter arrives 1 month at a time. Jonas snorted. We'll speak again in January. He left irritated that the joke had not yet failed. Then the north wind arrived. It came early and mean. Across the valley it rattled shutters, shoved smoke sideways, and found every crack men had promised themselves to repair. Temperatures dropped hard. Then harder. Snow followed, fine and dry, driven in sheets. Cabins began their yearly battle. Feed the stove. Stuff rags in gaps. Hang blankets over doors. Wake at midnight to add wood. Wake at 3 to do it again. Up on the ridge, nothing changed above Elias's home except the thickness of snow over the roof. Below ground, the chamber remained steady. The snow only helped, adding insulation over the buried roof. The earth walls never flashed cold the way timber did. The stairwell trapped sinking air. The stove needed little wood to maintain comfort. He measured the room one dawn with a thermometer from town. 58 degrees. Outside, it was 42 below. He wrote the numbers on a scrap of paper and laughed alone. Not at people. At certainty. By midwinter, the valley had burned through wood piles meant to last till March. Families slept in coats. Ice formed on inside walls where breath met cold planks. Children were kept from bare floors because boards could numb feet in minutes. Jonas still boasted in public. Then his youngest son fell ill from the cold. That night the storm came, the kind remembered by years afterward. Wind roared without pause. Snow erased fences. One barn roof collapsed before midnight. Elias sat below ground reading by lamplight, warm enough in shirt sleeves, when pounding shook the hatch above. 3 heavy blows. Then again. He climbed the stairs and lifted the door against drifted snow. Jonas Hale stood there white with frost, beard ice solid, eyes full of something he had never worn before. Neat. Our stovepipe froze shut, he shouted into the gale. House won't hold heat. Boy can't stop shaking. His gaze dropped into the stairwell, where warm air rose like a secret. Then back to Elias. The hole in the ground, he said hoarsely. He swallowed hard. Please. Elias stepped back at once. Bring them. Jonas stared, stunned less by the invitation than by how quickly it came. You take us in after. Bring them, Elias repeated. Talking wastes heat. Jonas turned and ran into the storm. Elias shoved the hatch down long enough to keep the stairwell warm, then moved quickly below. He fed 2 split logs into the stove, set kettles on top, cleared the benchroom, laid blankets near the inner wall where the earth stayed warmest. Then he climbed back to the hatch and listened to the wind hammer above like fists. Minutes later it opened again. Jonas came first, carrying his youngest son wrapped in quilts, the boy limp with exhaustion. Behind him stumbled his wife, another child, and Jonas's mother bent nearly double beneath blankets. They descended into the stairwell one by one. Each face changed the moment they reached the lower landing. Shock. The cold vanished there. Not tropical warmth. Not summer heat. But still air. Dry air. Life-giving air. Jonas's wife began to cry silently before she even entered the main room. Elias guided them inside. Wet coats there. Boots off near the stove. Boy by the wall. He moved with calm efficiency while they obeyed without question. The youngest boy was placed beneath blankets beside the clay-sealed earth wall. Elias handed Jonas's wife a mug of hot water. Small sips. Jonas stood in the center of the room, turning slowly, unable to reconcile what he felt with what he believed. The room was warm. The floor was not freezing. No wind hissed through cracks. No walls glittered with frost. Only the steady tick of the stove and the low orange glow from lamplight. You're living like this, Jonas said quietly. All winter. Jonas looked ashamed enough to be honest. We burned twice the wood you did. 3 times. Jonas almost laughed. Almost. Then came another pounding above. All heads lifted. Elias met Jonas's eyes. How many neighbors know you came? Jonas hesitated. Enough. Elias nodded once and climbed the stairs. At the hatch stood Mrs. Carter from the creek road, wrapped in a shawl crusted white with snow. Behind her were 2 Miller children. Then old Rowan from the far field. The storm had turned pride into honesty across the valley. Elias opened the hatch wide. One at a time, careful on the steps. To the night they came. Not the whole town, but enough. Those whose fires failed. Those whose pikes froze. Those whose walls no longer held back the cold. The stairwell became a slow-moving line of shivering people descending into disbelief. Below ground, the chamber filled. Children slept curled beside warm walls. Mothers sat shoulder to shoulder on benches. Men who had mocked the hatch door now stood quietly in stocking feet, feeling warmth rise through packed earth floors. No one laughed. No one needed convincing. The underground home did that itself. Elias managed the room like a ship captain in rough seas. Rotate places near the stove. Keep the hatch closed unless needed. Dry gloves by the stones. Small fires, not roaring ones. Too much heat wasted quickly. Steady heat lasted. By dawn, the storm worsened above. Wind screamed so violently through the stovepipe cap that it howled like an animal. Yet below, the earth muffled everything into a distant growl. Children slept through it. Jonas sat near the stairwell staring at the ceiling. All my life, he said, I thought a home had to stand tall. Elias split another stick. A home has to stand winter. Jonas lowered his head. No one argued. By midday the next day, supplies became the next concern. Elias counted potatoes, dried beans, smoked meat, oats. Enough for himself 2 months. Enough for many people 3 days. So when the wind eased slightly, he organized work crews. Men dug outward from the hatch tunnel through drifted snow. Others hauled food from nearby cabins. Women boiled broth in melted snow. Children carried kindling from the stairwell, wood stack. What had begun as one man's strange shelter became the valley's command post. Every person who entered found a task. Every task warmed them further. That night more people returned to their own homes carrying advice. Bank snow against walls. Sleep in one room only. Seal chimney drafts. Hang blankets low, not high. Keep water from freezing near the stove stones. And when they spoke of Elias's buried home, they no longer called it a hole. They called it refuge. The storm broke on the 3rd morning. Sunlight struck a white world remade by wind. Fences vanished. Barns half buried. Roads erased. Elias opened the hatch fully and let fresh air pour down the stairwell. People climbed out one by one, blinking in the light. Then they turned and looked back. At the plain wooden door in the ground. At the stovepipe beside it. At the place they had mocked for months. Jonas stood last before descending again to fetch blankets. He paused beside Elias. I called you a potato. Elias looked across the valley. You were close. Jonas frowned. How? I grew better underground. For the first time in days, laughter returned. Real laughter. Tired, grateful, humbled. The weeks after the storm changed the valley more than years had. Men dug root cellars and enlarged them into sleeping rooms. Cabins gained earth berms against north walls. Storm entrances were built below grade. Food stores moved underground where frost could not reach them. Even those who kept their homes above ground now fought below it. And all of them asked Elias questions. How deep to dig? How to brace walls? Where should vents go? How steep should steps be? How to keep moisture out? He answered every one. Not because they had mocked him, because winter had already punished them enough. By spring, snowmelt revealed something else. The underground roof had suffered no damage. No shingles torn. No rafters strained. No walls warped by freeze and thaw. Grass even began greening over the buried chamber before the valley fields did. Jonas visited carrying a sack of seed. For the roof, he said awkwardly. Thought grass roots might hold the top tighter. Elias accepted it. Good thought. Jonas smirked faintly. I learned from a man with no house. Elias looked toward the hatch. I have a house. Jonas nodded. Better than most of ours. Together they spread seed across the earthen roof while the valley below buzzed with digging, rebuilding, and copying. By the next winter, doors in the ground appeared across the valley like a new species of architecture. Some led to pantries, some to sleeping rooms, some to full homes beneath the frost line. No one laughed at them. Children no longer dared each other to knock. They asked whose was warmest. And on the ridge beyond the last fence post, Elias Crow's hidden home remained nearly invisible. Just a door in the ground. A thin pipe breathing smoke. Nothing to admire from a distance. Everything to admire up close. Because the valley had learned what pride forgets every season. The smartest shelter does not need to be seen, only felt when the cold arrives.